but it's really it's relatively simple. What's that?
I've been rejecting invitations to do Zoom things actually a lot.
Oh, thank you for accepting this one.
Well, yeah, I just haven't. Yeah, no, for sure. This is the second one. I did a show with my director, and then you. No.
You got an echo there. What you're saying?
Oh, let me fix that. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, this is my second Zoom anything since COVID went viral.
Yeah.
I did a performance discussion with my director, and then you. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while anyway.
Right. Well, cool. Well, we are live. So we got this hour. We are joined by Rachelle Linda Escamilla. We're very excited. She's a poet and a playwright, and we're gonna hear more about the current projects that she's working on and some of her past publications. But first, before we do that, Rachelle, can you tell us a little bit how you got started? How you got started? How you got started writing? Early days, and also how you became kind of known for your work. What did that process look like?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like many Chicano families, or maybe just in my Chicano, I don't know, stories were told a lot. So stories and oral tradition were part of who I was, and so that became part of my life. And escape novels and writing, of course, that helped me through the difficult times when I was a child. And then really I started getting known, quote unquote, known for my poetry back when I was at San Jose State, when I started the Poets and Writers Coalition at San Jose State University. Basically, we were in this English department, and it was hella white, right? Like every English department across the United States. Just like everyone's writing a rewrite of Beowulf. Every single person is. Just trying to perpetuate their culture, I guess. So I was like, this English department sucks. Where are all the brown people? So I started an organization, and all of a sudden all these brown kids came out of the woodwork, and we were the Poets and Writers Coalition, and we launched all these poetry readings and stuff. And that's when I think I got known for organizing. And through organizing, my poetry became more popular, because the more you give, really, in the poetry world, it comes back, usually, if other people are giving as well. So, and then I just kept following that poetry line, like the traditional way, the way academics tell you to, which is to go get an MFA. So I went and got an MFA at the University of Pittsburgh. And then after that, I just kept following poetry. I was like, well, wherever I go, I got to do poetry. So I applied for jobs all over the world, and I got a job in China, launching China's first creative writing program in English at a university in southern China in Guangzhou. And that's when I started doing editing and working in the publishing world outside of the university. So that's when I was working with In the Red magazine, which is South China's answer to Vogue. I was doing some little things here and there for like National Geographic subsidiaries, because I was traveling, and then I was doing lots of writing in the expatriate world out there in China. And then that's where I won the prize for my first book, Imaginary Animal, through Willow Books. And so Imaginary Animal is my book that's about my family. And that's about, I say that it's like not all my stories. It's my mom's stories and my grandma's stories and my tia's stories and my uncle's stories and my dad's stories, all that stuff. And they're all coming through me. And so Imaginary Animal is the first book. And my second book is me drawing a picture of men. That is also through Willow Books. And that is an exploration of the sexual self. So that the second book is me, is like me, a million times me. And the first book is like everybody else.
So a lot of what we do, a lot of what we're trying to gather here is kind of like oral histories of like presses, venues, etc. So can you tell us a little bit about Willow Press?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Willow Books is the literary arm of Aquarius Press, and Willow Books has a big prize. Willow Books at the time when I was applying, which was 2014, 2015 to Willow Books when I got published, they were the only national publisher, and I don't know if they still carry this title, but they were the only national publisher that focuses on writers of color exclusively and have since the beginning. So they don't publish white folk or those who identify as white. I don't know how that works. So Willow Books is run by Heather Buchanan, and my editor is Randall Horton, and they're based in Detroit. Randall's out in Connecticut, I think Hartford. And the thing that I like about Willow Books is that they allow that, because they publish only writers of color, the kinds of books that writers of color get to write are more complex than, say, a book that's going to go out of, like, I don't know, Northwestern or Four Way Books or and then these other presses who only jumped on the writers of color train when it became popular, and they decided that, oh, well, maybe we should actually start giving brown people some more opportunity at things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they still have white editors.
Right.
I mean, I don't think there's any way, shape, or form that my book could have been read by a white person and had been published. I don't think they could have published it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, but expand.
Let me do the work. How is it possible for any white person in the United States that is not also from poverty, also from struggle in a really like juntos way to people of color, how could they possibly publish a book by any writer of color from poverty and be able to do it without sort of skewing it or using it or using the writer? Like, how can they do that? I don't know if that's possible, not in this world.
Yeah.
Do you get that?
Well, let's compare with the most. There's obviously the most recent scandal with American Dirt. So, what like? I mean, the most obvious example is American Dirt, right? So they make this book and it's clear who the audience is. It's clear the audience is intended to be, the intent is to be a kind of a racist audience who want to have certain stereotypes confirmed, and they want to have certain ideas about people confirmed, and that's why they buy the book, right?
Yeah.
And so, like you're saying but who is your target audience? So that's a better question. Who's your target audience, and why is it that?
I think that is a better question.
Yeah.
I think I've been trying to define that for a very long time, and I think only recently it's starting to become a defined place. And the target audience for me is other Chicanos, other Chicanx people who are working in the various worlds of Nepantla, right? The various forms of assimilation. If Nepantla is the metaphysical or the metaphysical space in between the gate of Mexico and the gate of the United States, and we all like build our culture and our lives and everything inside of Nepantla. If that's where we're existing, those are the people who are my audience. And then like you even get into another subset of who your audience is, because also the other thing is like I sound white. Like California girl. So when I talk on the phone, people are like, they don't think she's a brown girl, and then I come out and I am who I am, and my Spanish isn't very good. I'm a pocha, and so like there's all of these ways in which my existence exists in a very specific like meter inside of Nepantla, and I think that's where I'm trying to find my audience. And so my audience is really whoever has a story that includes sort of place and or who like people who look at the place around them, who see the socioeconomic conditions of the world around them, who are or experience the world in a form of brownness, who honor their family in the complicated ways that we honor our families, and who also likes verse and craft.
Yeah.
I guess that's my audience.
Yeah. So what I'm interested is that talking about a little bit is about kind of jump the gun a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about your experience in the MFA program. We've had a few people talk about experience in MFA programs, some good, some bad, but universally the ones that have been bad, almost universally, they've been bad for the same reason, which is that in the MFA program they were engaged in, it was kind of demanded of them or requested of them or they were pressured, put it that way, to put more, I don't know how to put this, but more ethnic signifiers that would be recognizable to a broader audience in their writing. Did you have that experience?
Yeah, and not only do they request that you use your ethnicity as a way of entering the world of poetry. Like, you can't come into poetry without entering through your ethnicity if you're a person of color. And the MFA program saw that as like a way to enter, because they didn't know what to do with our work, right? Not only do you have that side, but you also have this weird gauge where they're like, okay, be ethnic, but not too much. Like, you can be ethnic, but don't go too ethnic. Like, and if you do go too ethnic, oh, well, you might need different readers and you might need different people to workshop this because we really don't know how to deal with it. And for me, I mean, I was at University of Pittsburgh. It was an amazing experience overall, but I was working 3 jobs, dude. I was working as I didn't get funding. They accepted 4 poets, dude, 4 poets when I went in 2008. And all of the other ones were white and they all got funding, and I was the only person of color and I didn't get funding. And they said it was because of my GPA. My GPA wasn't high enough, but I was at San Jose State University running the Poets and Writers Coalition and working as a full-time preschool teacher and a nanny on the weekends and a full-time student. So as a full-time student, full-time teacher, nanny on the weekends, and running a poetry organization. So I got A minuses. You know, they should have seen that and they should have given me funding. So I was working a ton. Anyway, the MFA put a lot of pressure in lots of different ways. I mean, it wasn't even just like people's stupidity coming out of their mouths at me inside of the workshop. It was also like professors who had specialties in very specific areas. And I learned a lot about African American poetry and Black arts and all of that stuff from University of Pittsburgh. I worked with amazing people like Toy Derricott, who has always been someone who's very important to me. And she is a founder of Kabe Kanam, which is related to Willow Books. So there's that leg. But when I went to my thesis advisor, who is a very famous poet now, and I asked him, I was just like, are there any like brown poets I can read? Like brown people? I guess I'm just reading like white experimental, like white experimentalism, hardcore experimentalism, and then Black authors, which was amazing. But there was like nobody brown. And then my thesis advisor was like,
Yeah.
I'm paying $40,000 a year working my ass off for an education. Yeah. I want to know the names of some brown writers I could read. And he goes,
wow. Oh, yeah. That guy. All right. So what was what ended up being, how did you get in contact? I mean, how did you first discover some of this? I mean, because there's a large pantheon. So I mean, how did you connect?
Yeah, I fucking know now. It took long enough.
How did you come in contact with this body of work?
Well, of course, Juan Felipe Herrera is the person that everyone tells you to go to, and then once you follow Juan Felipe down the rabbit hole, you find everybody else. Lorna D. Cervantes, I knew about Lorna D. because she's at San Jose State, and she grew up on Race Street and that other side of San Jose, and actually wrote a poem to her, and then you hear of everyone else, right? Whatever Poetry Foundation puts out, Carmen Jimenez Smith, and then you just keep following it. And then when I came out to California and got hired at random at CSU Monterey Bay, I started taking over courses that were Chicano specific. And so then I just like dove right in. I was just like, I am just going to find all of the Chicano poets that exist, like all the Chicano poets. And then once I started doing that, then you get connected. And then I started running the Latinx Poetic Symposium, which was originally with Angel Dominguez and I ran that together. And then we ran it a couple years in a row. I ran it with Angel, and then I ran it on my own. And then this year we didn't do it because of COVID. But we basically brought Latinx poets from all over the United States into Monterey to do workshops and panel discussions and all that good stuff. So, yeah, and then I found you at that reading over in Oakland, Speaking Asheville, with Josiah Luis. But I think I found you at I met you somewhere else. I met you at
Alley Books.
Alley Cat Books.
Alley Cat Books, yeah.
Blown away.
So you mentioned Josiah and Alley Cat. Can you talk a little bit about some of the venues that once you got your work, you're settled in the Bay? What are some of the venues that you would attend?
For a while, I was attending venues at Alley Cat Books, doing readings with Litquake and 100,000 Poets for Change, and a lot of whatever the Bay Area scene had, whoever would invite me out there. But mostly what I've really been working on is bringing people to Monterey, because we're 3 hours away from San Francisco, like 2.5 hours away from San Francisco. And I just think that since Salinas is the heartland of the agricultural valley, and this is where all of the Chicanidad in this area is really, really located, or the rural, right? Because I'm a rural girl. I just like want to bring the art here. So that's really what I've been working on, is like bringing the art here. And for a while I was working with CSUMB's Salinas Center for Arts and Culture, which was in the heart of Salinas, California. That is in the same building that the Steinbeck Center is in. It's half Steinbeck Center, Steinbeck Center, and half the Salinas Center for Arts and Culture. And that was run by a woman named Enid Rice. And the art was brown. It was just all brown art. Like almost 90% of it was brown art. And so I was bringing readings there. I was having lots of different people come along there. So that's what I've been working. I've been working to bring people here, because I really think that the mobility of the Chicanx, the rural Chicanx culture, we don't really have the mobility that people have in the city. Like if there are events and things happening, they're 2.5 hours away. What student at the university in Monterey is going to be able to do that? So I've got to bring them here. That's what I've been trying to do. That's what I've been working on, is just bringing them here.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I want to talk now about some of the things you got coming up. This new thing you got working on. That you're working on we mentioned at the beginning, a poet and a playwright. Before we get to the play that you're working on, and you're taking around the country, can we hear a poem?
Yeah. I'm gonna do a poem that I did the other day for Cinco de Mayo. And I know Cinco de Mayo is not celebrated by everyone, but it was very much celebrated by us growing up. Did you celebrate it growing up too?
Sometimes. Periodically, I don't know.
We looked for any opportunity to get drunk and party and break plates in the kitchen and dance.
Like there was some even like childhood. There was some years we would, some years we wouldn't. I don't know. It was kind of it was one of the inconsistent things. So I go get drunk, but and then I'd stop and I was like, wait a minute, this is wrong. I'm not doing this. And then I stopped drinking altogether. But I think I stopped.
Mexican Independence Day. But it's a
well, no, it was like greater chance of getting a DUI day is what it was. I mean, Mexican, you go to Mayo, St. Patrick's.
Yeah, either that or greater chance of getting into a rumble at school when you wear your Mexican shit and the white kids start at you, because
Yeah, definitely. But I'm just saying, like by the time I'm even thinking about maybe I shouldn't be drinking today. That was like before I was like, this is culturally wrong. I don't believe in this. for that was like, that is how you get a DUI. Like, you know, like there are checkpoints. Like that, that happened way sooner. So
All right, so I'm actually going to read you a poem that was pulled out of my first book. So my first book is Imaginary Animal, and that's the book that's getting turned into a play with director Catherine Wilkinson. But this poem and multiple other poems were pulled out for the sake of the sequencing inside of this manuscript. So there's poems that just didn't seem to fit in the narrative that I was trying to build in the book of poetry. But now I'm getting ready to release a second digital edition of Imaginary Animal, and my publisher, Willow Books, has requested that I go through and find pieces that maybe were not published before and put them back in. So this is one of those unpublished pieces that hopefully will go into the digital edition. It's called Family Party. Whew. It's been a while since I read. Thank you for inviting me. This is really exciting. Right. Family party. Cousin cuts the cake. Her daughter serves Thea. Cousin. Foundation. Every person in their role. An outside kid hands a plate of cake to a cousin trying to quiet a newborn, and cousin fills the styrofoam bowl from warehouse-sized tortilla chips bag. Dad ladles pea green salsa into a smaller bowl. Thea, this reminds me who Thea that is, and a cousin who had a baby and lives where. My brother, husband, and I brace ourselves, create a protected layer around, oh shit, incoming Thea with egg rolls. Incoming Theo dragging boots on the dust and drinking a beer. Incoming two young cousin with two small babies and an eager smile. She wants to know how we've been. Here we are, each generation stacked upon each generation, stacked upon this generation, like our grandmas stacked themselves in the backs of the bracero trucks. In the fields of much to pick. How our tias remember taking a truck up Pacheco Pass to pick melons from a disgruntled farmer who used to shoot at them. And that's how Theo lost his voice for a whole week, screaming. Or when cousin and me lit a firework on the 4th and it landed on Mom. Here we are, generations of life, watching little ones become generational numbers, watching family fall into the American dream, where nobody speaks Spanish, but everyone has a piñata at the family party.
So tell me more about this idea of this idyllic place where nobody speaks Spanish, but everyone has a piñata.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, man. That's just what it's this. Sometimes there's that family, that side, you know. Nobody speaks Spanish, man. We don't speak Spanish no more. But you know, I mean, the problem is that like my grandma didn't even speak proper Spanish. She was illiterate. She didn't speak much. She sang and she danced and she talked. She commanded things. She cooked, she cleaned, she had 13 kids. I mean, who taught her anything? Her Spanish wasn't really Spanish. In fact, funny story, you know, beauty marks in English or whatever, for my whole life until my baby was born, because I read her a book, I thought they were called nunas, N-U, not lunas. So like beauty marks are lunas, right? Lunares. But we thought they were nuna with an N because our family was so migratory and illiterate and like nobody knew really what they were saying until I read this damn kids book by Eric Carle in Spanish, and it was like a donkey with lunares, and I was like, a donkey with lunares? Oh, those are lunas. Like, what the fuck? You know, like, so to say that my family doesn't speak Spanish because they have assimilated into some white world is not the truth. The fact of the matter is that the foundation of our education in Spanish was never actually real. And so as the generations were educated, they were educated in English primarily. And so there's no Spanish. there's Spanish music, and there's Spanish yelling, and there's Spanish bad words, and there's Spanish, but there's no like Spanish.
Yeah, but and there's a Pinatas somewhere. I mean, it's a colonial. They're both colonial languages, anyways. I mean, who cares? But it just kind of it's interesting that juxtaposition, like there's still Pinatas, right? So there's still like this cultural.
Yeah, but you have to have a piñata. When I was a kid, we used to make them,
Yeah.
but I tried to make one for my daughters, and that came out bullshit. That's
Yeah.
hard.
No, it's interesting though, because they always get this idea that like certain people are whitewashed or they don't like because they don't do this, they don't do that, and they don't.
Yeah.
But then you just dig a little bit, like just a little under the surface, like I mean, I've been accused of being whitewashed because my Spanish will quote and this and that the other, and because I know certain things about European writers, right? But like you dig a little deeper, and like my uncle was a guitar player for Maria Conchita Alonso.
Yeah.
That's not some white boy shit, right? So like like it is what it is. So, I mean, like you dig a little deeper. I was Maywood. I mean, like, it's nonsense. Everyone's always trying to like check you, whatever. But it is interesting that like there is a difference. I mean, there are differences, and there's just
I think it's the internalization, like when the family internalizes their assimilation, right? Like it's one thing for things to happen, like these things to happen over time, like, oh, you start buying giant bags of tortilla chips from Costco because Costco now has giant bags of tortilla chips, and nobody's making like, tortillas by hand anymore because they can be found somewhere else. And those are like processes of assimilation that like happen to you. And then whether or not you like internalize that, where you're like, well, I'm not Mexican, or I'm not Chicano, or I'm not that. And I have family who are not educated, who use derogatory terms against our own people, and who I have to like yell at and get mad at family parties and like get pissed off and just leave because I can't deal with their racism. So like that's real too.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that like it doesn't really change things though. I mean, like you can, however you interpret yourself, you're still interpreted by the world a certain way. Like no matter what you say about yourself, there's still like, so like there's my own family history, and like members of my family might get mad if I ever say like, well, this and this happened. They're like, no, we were always but like whatever my interpretation, your interpretation is, there's still the facts. And this happened, that happened, that happened. And then in our own lives, like no matter how you interpret it, that happened, that happened, that happened. Like no matter how you like interpret like whether or not there's racism in the world, or whether or not like, oh, that's something in the past. Well, yeah, well, don't you remember the time that this person said this to you? Don't you remember the time this person said that to you? Don't you remember the time this person said this thing to you? Like, well, that was blah blah blah. But
yeah, no, and it doesn't, and none of the internalized racism or the kind of the microaggression or stuff that happens even within the culture comes close to the kind of white supremacy and colonization and oppression that comes onto our shoulders from the outside world. I mean, it's impossible, even with this current situation. Like I know everyone is, working really hard to stay home and all that stuff. Yeah, everyone on the internet that I see on IG is staying home, but every single one of my family members is putting on a mask and gloves and taping it to their eyes so that they can wear their glasses and going out and working every day because they're all essential employees because they're all brown and poor. So like, I don't know how to contend with talking about these little tiny things that happen, these little tiny moments of assimilation that might be problematic within a family, without talking about like this giant structure that is just meant for us to work until we die, no matter what we do. And I mean, and then we have to say, I don't give a fuck. And, and that's kind of how I am. I work my ass off to be where I am today, and to have a house, to have a roof over my head, and to have a car that I want. And I still have 3 jobs, plus all the projects that I have. And to have everything that I have, I work my ass off for it. And so, yeah, I'm going to take my Jeep out to the coast during quarantine. And I don't give a fuck what anyone says to me because I worked for this and my family is out there working and everyone's out there doing what they're going to do. And I'll put my damn mask on. And if a cop wants to stop me, they can fucking stop me. And if y'all people want to get pissed off about it, you can get pissed off about it because our people have to work until we die. So we have to celebrate and live our life the way we want to in between because they're going to kill us anyway. So who the fuck cares?
That's what we're looking at. Yeah. So tell us about the play. That's a smooth transition.
All right. So one of my jobs is that I do PR and social media for the Philip Glass Days and Nights Festival.
Oh, wow.
Philip Glass is a big composer. Most of my white friends lose their shit when they hear that I work for Philip Glass. I had no clue who he was. I was just like, just pay me, I'll make you your posters, that's fine. You need me to clean the office too? I can do that too. So anyway, I work for Philip Glass at the Days and Nights Festival here in Monterey. And last year I met this amazing director. Their name is Catherine Wilkinson, and Catherine is a director in Brooklyn. And we hit it off, and I drove her up the coast, and I took her to a couple of like the places where I write and stuff, and I handed her my book, and I was like, hey, you know, I've always thought that this could be a play.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how I wrote it.
Yeah.
And so she read it, and she was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we are working independently. We do not have any institutionalized funding. We are working on raising money on our own. There were plans to have like tamale sales and all kinds of other stuff. Basically, we're going to work with 10 grand and launch the play in New York off Broadway, which is where Catherine works a lot. She does a lot of her plays off Broadway. So we had already paid for Access Theater, already paid for this beautiful theater space, already starting to like put the play together. And then this happened, and of course, everyone's plans fell apart. So right now, it's actually kind of a good thing. So right now, Catherine and I are, so I basically, how do I say this? I'm dancing out my book. So Catherine specializes in movement. My book has a lot of movement because we were migratory and the poetry moves forward. And I was a dancer in high school, and I always loved dancing. I loved working with my body. And so Catherine is sending me body prompts. So she'll send me an Instagram message and say like she's like, I want you to lead with your elbows. I want you to pretend like, what does the body look like in a gust of wind? How do you like interpret that? And then so I interpret that, and then I find places inside of my book where like wind is going, and then I go out into nature and I like look at the grass and the trees and the various chaparral because I'm a big old nature nerd. And I go out there and I like try and find the movement that's happening in the natural world and then like reenact it in the space of my body. And then I put the words together with it, and then we're going to move forward. I don't know if I'm going to dance out my book in the play, or if my movements are going to be the basis for movement for a troupe of dancers or whatever's going to happen. But so it's very esoteric. It's very out there. And then the Philip Glass Days and Nights Festival will come in October here to Salinas and Monterey. And so part of the thing I love about my job is they let me do what I want as long as it's around art, and they support me. And so if I want to put on my play for the festival, I'm allowed to do it. I just got to get the funding and make it happen, and they'll put their support behind me. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I'm working on right now. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So so how have you so you've only done one other thing on Zoom. What how are you dealing with this artistically with this whole crisis? Like what's been your response?
Well, I just got news today that 2 of my family members are down. I don't know what's going to happen, and of course we don't say it out loud because we don't know. We don't want to put words to possibilities, at least. But so And then last week, the United Farm Workers didn't have any food to feed families, and there were like 1,000 people standing outside of the United Farm Workers in Salinas, California, the place where people pick the food. 90% of the United States produce is picked here and grown and picked here in Salinas, California. And the workers who work in the agriculture who pick the food don't have food to eat, which was my grandfather's story and how one of my tios died of starvation at the age of 3 months. So I went down to the United Farm Workers. I just sort of plugged a bunch of stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and I raised like $500. And then I went for about an 8-hour shift and went back and forth between the white people supermarkets and the UFW, because I didn't want to buy all the stuff off of the Mexican market shelves, because I didn't want to like wipe out the rice and beans and tomato sauce and canned green beans and stuff. I didn't want to wipe that stuff out from the Mexican marts because people in the community still need their food. But I went to all the white people supermarkets, and the Hispanic aisle was full of stuff to just buy. So I just went in. And I bought all the Hispanic food. And I was able to put together about 70 bags worth of food, and that was not nearly enough. The community food bank in the area was also running out of food. So the way I've been responding to COVID and all of this has not been to be on Zoom and do poetry readings, unfortunately. I mean, I just, poetry, I'll say this. If you're a poet, you know that there is a time to perform, and there is a time to write, and there's a time to observe, and there's a time to do all of the things that happen in the process of poetry. Poetry isn't just performance, and poetry isn't just published page, and it's not just words on the page. Poetry is how you view the world, how you absorb and exist in the world. And I'm constantly trying to write poetry in my body and myself by like remembering the places and remembering the things and imagining the world that's around me and listening to the words that people are saying and looking at the different colored masks on people's faces and like identifying different things in the world and being very like observant of the world around me. So I'm constantly writing poetry. I haven't written this poetry down yet, but I'm sure it'll come out. And I just think there's a quiet time. I think for me, there are just so many more things that are important, and feeding people is more important to me than poetry. That's not to say like I'm not doing my own shit. I mean, I just drove out to the coast this morning for 4 hours in my brand new bikini and took selfies.
Yeah, you still got to make art.
I don't
Cool. So where can we find out more about the play? Where can we find out more about your books? Where can we find out more of the information to follow up with you and your work?
Right now, all of my work, all of my public relations is on my Instagram. I'm working through IG. So if you want to hit me up on Instagram, that's the best way to find out what's going on. I push most of my professional poetry stuff through Facebook as well. I don't have a website anymore. I don't have the money for that anymore. I don't know how else to do it. I mean, how do we follow each other? We just follow each other, and we
Yeah. All right.
Follow the wherever it goes. So
yeah.
I'm on Instagram. I'm Poetita.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll drop, if we can, we'll drop the link below, and we'll figure out that, and people can follow you and follow the play, and we'll drop links to the place to purchase the book, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. It's fine. I'll give you the book for free. I'll send you a link to my PDF copy if you want it.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rachelle. I really, really appreciate it. This has been a great time spent, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.